Healing fam. Welcome to Healing Not Heal, where we will talk about all things mental health and holistic wellness in a very transparent and culturally competent space. Usually I write something down, I jot something down, I'll have something up that I can kind of like reference notes to so that I could properly prepare for what I'm going to say. But today, I think this is genuinely just going to come right off the dome and from the heart. And because in a very therapeutic space, as a therapist, that's generally what we have to do anyway, right? We have to bring ourselves to therapy and have what our resources are available and just kind of work with the client in that moment and what they bring to us, right? And the reason that I have titled my own podcast, YouTube channel, whatever, Healing Not Healed, the reason I've called it that space is because one, I want to bring a good example of how we as therapists bring ourselves to therapy, but also because as humans, as all of us, as people, ever evolving, are ever changing, ever growing, ever learning. I cannot reiterate it enough. We are always, because life happens every day, life experiences happen every day. So we are always constantly learning and evolving. And so that healing process is continuous. That statement that people have in their bios, come healed, there's no such thing because you have no idea what life circumstances bring you. And so you generally bring yourself in every experience that you interact with people, and you do the best that you can. And so recently, there was a podcast done, and I don't know the podcast platform, and you can eat me up if you want. The capacity expert was on where she had made statements saying that gaslighting was stupid and just kind of felt it was over exaggerated and things. And so another therapist, Candace Love, made a response to that video with her tagged in it, just stating how she felt in her opinion that the tone was a little dismissive of those that have experienced violence. And so two different therapists, two wonderful Black women, two well within their experiences and their education and their research, and well respected by their clientele, the population they serve, and the platforms that they both have. They both have amazing platforms. And so the one thing to keep in mind is that when you look in the comments, you see the opposing and naying views. Of course, in the stream of both comments, you have those that support those opposing perspectives of two very great therapists, right? And so that's what I mean by you bring yourself to therapy, because it depends on how you perceive how each one showed up, right? And this is me projecting and me acknowledging my projection of my perspective and how I conceptualize that event, right? So on my experience, I know that I empathize and I connected more with Candace on the level of empathy and compassion and the approach of how we approach trauma. And so when she made her response, I knew it resonated with me, right? And that's not to say that I had any hard feelings of what Raquel said in her statement. It was just, I knew that it wasn't something that was in alignment with me, and I didn't have to agree or disagree in such a way that, I say anything. However, I was like, I'm going to repost this one, right? And so when Candace did her response, she did tag Raquel, and I hope I'm saying her name right, but she had tagged her, and I felt like her intentions, and again, this is me projecting, her intentions was to start a conversation. And of course, share her opinion that she felt that it was neglectful in that conversation to dismiss a larger part of the conversation. And that's the thing about how we perceive what we watch on the internet, is that there's so many nuances that these little clips, these little reels that people hold on to, it only has circumstantial information of that. Yes, you can relate to a lot of the information online, but you're missing a lot of contextual information and background information to say this really applies to me. You could say this resonates and I could feel that, but like their story is my story. No, everybody's story is different. And so everybody has a right to agree to disagree and have their opinions online. But I think what I saw on one platform was wanting to initiate a conversation about it as Black women and as therapists about viewing each other's perspective. Now, I did see Raquel's response to Candace Love's video, in which in her comment section, she said some statements about responding to the things online, check yourself emotionally. And it felt passive aggressive in that her response was to another therapist that added her. And so I felt like she was accusing Candace of doing what she in her response video was doing, was responding emotionally. However, they were both responding emotionally, bringing themselves to that circumstance, and just it's showing up different, their perspectives showing up different, and their perspectives aligning with those that align with them, right? You have two therapists who have such strong foundation in evidence-based practice, but we still bring ourselves to therapy. So I think although one looked like it was showing compassion and empathy, and one was showing stoicism and personal responsibility, they're still bringing themselves into a situation where we are addressing other people. And as a client, that is why I say the responsibility of healing is on the client, but the client is going to resonate through that healing journey with whoever is resonating with that spirit, with that person, right? With their lived experience, because both are right in their own respect. Both are right in their own logic. There are nuances that should be cleaner in how they're articulated, but at the same time, you still have two wonderfully educated Black therapists having opposing views about a very similar topic. As therapists, it is our jobs to be aware of compartmentalizing our personal experience, our personal feelings and values, and what is the client needing in that moment, and meeting them where they're at. And if your approach tends to meet people where they're at without your personal feelings getting into that situation, then it resonates with that client and it works for them. If you're not seeing success in that, then that's something that requires some supervision. But both of these women are successful in their rights because they have helped people excel in their lives in ways that resonate with them. Research has shown, even with the evidence-based practice, our personal, who we are, our personalities, our rapport is what helps lead the success of clients. And so I know a lot of therapists get in their heads about just being so book smart and being so just, perfect about saying the right thing and doing the right thing. And it's just being mindful of who you are. And that's the most important thing, is showing up, knowing who you are. And I think both approaches, both women, both experiences are valid, and that both know who they are. And you really can't do too much of this. You can only really just say, this woman is coming from their lived experience, and I just have so much gratitude for what she's doing to the community and the people that she's helping. Now, will I agree with everything she says? Probably not. Either or. You're not a yes man. I'm not going to agree with someone just because it resonates in some minute part of a video, right? I still don't know their lifestyle. I don't know their background, but I can conceptualize a piece of that information. I can grasp onto and learn something from. And I think that's the reality of the internet right now, because there is so much information out there. It's pretty much what resonates with you in a sense of conviction, right? Not always being agreeable with everything that you find on the internet, right? I think that kind of goes back to the cognitive dissonance of some things. There's been things where I was like, oh shit, that applies to me. I'm not gonna share that. I'm gonna share, right? But I know I have room for correction, and I say healing, not healed, because I don't want to have this perception that therapists have it all together and have it all right and aren't still processing their own life situations as they are still helping a population of people. And Everything that we do is rooted in evidence-based practice. However, we still show up. Our personalities still show up. And if you aren't in check with that, and if you are in denial about that, that is where you're going to mess up in therapy, is acting like you have no shit in your backyard either. I just wanted to give some insight into that because I think we do forget about transference, especially with a lot of things on the internet being so accessible. I know for myself, I am a very transparent therapist, but I know my transparency is rooted in my vulnerability as knowledge and as experience about how shame has been evolved as a tool to keep people in silence. And so I'm very aware on what I share and how much I share and what my level of comfort in sharing what I share. That's the part of I want us to recognize that we are all still growing and that we are all still evolving, and to give each other some grace, even in spaces. I even know when I get pissed off with people, I know it's like I'm triggered. And I start to investigate myself because I'm not going to dismiss my feelings in a situation when I feel offended or hurt. And I'm going to process that, but I'm also going to acknowledge what my trigger is and how I allow myself to get to that space. And so I think, again, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just saying people need to do a lot of conversation with themselves about their own triggers, projecting their triggers, and then delusion of perfectionism. This delusion of perfectionism that we have it all together on the internet. I don't want to be one of those people that pretends like I just have it all together and then one day I say some stupid shit and everybody's down my throat. I'm going to say the stupid shit now. I'm going to tell you that I'm going to probably say some stupid shit. I'm going to tell you that I'm not perfect and that I'm still growing and I'm making room for correction. And that's the same thing that I tell my clients. And that's the same thing that I tell my community. And so my space, again, we are healing, not heal. We are evolving, and we are doing that change by holding ourselves accountable while holding other people accountable as well. And there is no shame in holding yourself accountable. There is no shame in holding other people accountable as well. And I think a lot of here's the thing about why I think I side a little bit with Candace's framework when it comes to the approach of therapy is that a lot of these labels and terminologies that have come up in therapy, our human behavior, our genetic code is to search out information, is to look for information. And so we want to put a label and a concept to everything because we want to understand that concept. We want to make logic of a situation. And so when people experience trauma, they are even more hyper aware and hyper vigilant of their situation. And so they are constantly in a state of trying to reconcile information as they go about life in their relationships with people. And so what the brain will do is when it has gaps of information, when you don't know something, your brain will create a narrative. What you decide to tell it is based on the framework and the work that you do, that inner work that you do with yourself. That's the narrative that it's going to take. If you're always woe is me, everything is my fault, everything is bad, that's the narrative that's going to take, right? If someone misses a phone call or a text, they don't like me, they don't da 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 da. And then you create a tension or a situation that never existed, but because you didn't have enough information, because maybe you didn't reach out or they didn't reach out to you, you start to create a narrative and you create a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think a lot of the times there is some empathy of getting those people that have lived those experiences to rework their brains to come to another level of understanding to address those problems differently. And that takes time. That takes the consistency of an environment that makes them feel safe. And I feel like that's the part where it's a little bit dismissive of what reinforcers do you have to help you cognitively change that mindset. And I think both approaches, yes, empathy and compassion, self-accountability and conviction, but also What supportive environment, what reinforcers. There's so many other nuances we have to consider as therapists when we are addressing a situation, and it's not always black and white. And so yes, there is a lot of information on the internet, but remember, when we tell ourselves something, whatever the narrative is, you're still missing information. And that's why I said my opinion is me projecting off my perception of both women and their lived experience. I don't know them. I don't watch every video. I don't watch every podcast. I don't know every situation. But in that short clip and how they interacted with each other in that small moment, that is the intent that I was able to perceive based off my perspective and my lived experience, and how each one resonated with me mentally, emotionally, and on a spiritual level. When you're searching for a therapist, it is like dating, because it has to be a good fit. If you have been talked to like this all your life, you don't need that kind of approach. You do need reinforcement that there is people that have compassion in this world. It's about balance. But if you're somebody who has always been evaded of accountability and have been enabled, you might need someone who has a little bit more stern on your ass type of approach. And that works, right? Not everybody is the same, but we are all searching for a sense of connection and vulnerability in order for me to show up in therapy. So me as the client, where I can feel vulnerable enough for me to show up in therapy, I can see my own shit. I can see my issues. I can process through that. And if you're the therapist that has integrity and, again, evidence-based practice, you're going to help me get to the place where I find my shit and I clean it up, right? I clean it up. As the client, healing is my responsibility. As a therapist, I guide you to get there, right? So that's all I wanted to share on the topic. Again, I think both are doing amazing things from what I've seen and heard. And there's only so many of us Black women therapists in the world nationally and on these forums speaking out. And so I think working together and collaboratively, respecting each other's opinions, differences, and being able to challenge each other, right? What I saw in that platform was a case consultation. I saw two therapists with two opinions sitting at the table looking at a situation, and I hope that people looked at it like, oh, I can take that, and that's how I'm going to help serve my community. That is called a case consultation. So, again, my healing fam, when you are looking for a therapist, yes, it's like dating, it's shopping. Find someone that connects with you and you know that is going to hold you accountable, but also is going to meet where you're at and show up being their authentic self. Remember to like, share, subscribe. Again, you can follow me on Patreon, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I do my sound healing sound bath sessions on Sundays, 8 p.m. live on Instagram. And then always check out a new episode every Thursday here on this platform. Thank you.